talk about here. So remember where we were standing before? We were standing on that really resistant rock, right? That was making those ridges. If you turn around, you see that there's this big high spot here that's called Mill. That's that same resistant rock, right? So it's that same limestone, that Miocene limestone, that's outcropping there again, right? So that's the actual core of the island. That's the stable part of the island. We're going to see within the next stop and then the final stop that what happens is all of a sudden, okay, so if we want to orient ourselves, right, here's that narrow channel I was telling you about, right, here to the mainland, right, on the other side of Alabama. So the bay is up in this direction. So all that sediment gets funneled down, comes around here, right, and of course it's going out to the Gulf. So it's kind of coming down the channel and it's getting funneled in that direction. So the western part of the island is highly unstable. Okay? Barrier islands are just giant conveyor belts of sand, right? That's how the area is moving in. Our last stop we're going to talk about how that sand moves, right? Why it moves the way it does. But the eastern side of the island here is very, very stable. And it's stable because we have that core of rock that's right there that's holding it all in place, and the sediment's kind of attracted to it, right? It's kind of stuck to that core part of the island. Another way I can tell that this side of the island is stable is there are pine trees. Okay? Pine trees will only grow where there is stable ground. If the ground is sinking, if the ground is washing away, it will not support pine tree growth. Okay? So that's another good test you can do at home, right? In New Orleans, our ground is highly unstable on the South Shore. So if you want to tell how fast your property is sinking, if you've got a pine tree on or near your property, it's metastable. Obviously, we don't have any outside. Right? But if you've got a pine tree on your property, it's probably more stable. Now think about this. Where do you find more pine trees on the North Shore or South Shore? North Shore, because the North Shore is very, very stable. The North Shore is not going anywhere. It's us, right? You're stable, right? Those of us that live in the South Shore, we're kind of screwed a little bit, right? It's all going to wash away. Geology, my dear, geology. So, right, but out here on this island, you're going to see, right, if you look kind of down the island, you can see, look at lots and lots of pine trees. And then you see where those houses are there? That's the end of the pine trees. There are no more pine trees past that point on the island. Because the island gets very, very narrow, and the sand is just constantly moving like a conveyor belt. They're not. This part right here where the trees are stable. All the way down there where everyone wants to build their home. Not stable. Not stable. And like I said, we're going to see that on our very last spot. So, given that information I just gave you, right? So the Army Corps wants to help make this island stable. We want to keep, right, they put these rocks here. So, $200 million. These rocks do not come from here. They come from the state of Pennsylvania. It is Pennsylvanian in age, so it's limestone. So we're talking about 380 million years, somewhere around that age. So it's a really old rock. Limestone, right? The bigger dark nodules, right, on this one, and you can see right here, that's chert, so microcrystalline quartz. A lot of this is just interlaid mud that could be in it. The white is going to be mainly calcite in the middle of calcite. Chert, C-H-E-R-T, right, which is just microcrystalline quartz. Now, we're going to talk about the rocks specifically here in a second, but why would they want to put rocks out here, right? Well, we know the sand is washing in. We want to protect barrier islands because we talked about this slow down wave energy. Right? We got a storm coming in. So they put down these rocks to help trap the sand, right? To help keep the sand. They build these big extensions like this, so that way the sand will get trapped in what's called the groin or the armpit. Right there, so it'll help the island grow. Now, here's the kicker. Yay, Army Corps, here's the kicker for you. What did I just tell you about this part of the island? Stable. This part of the island's not going to wash away. Right. What? The rocks should be on the other side of the island. Okay? Or at least along the westernmost beaches. They're not? No, they're not. They're only here. They're here, and I understand the logic was the sediment's coming from up there, so we're going to trap it where the sediment comes. So they don't want it just already there. Right. Well, no, they wanted to go there, but they wanted to build this part of the island here, right? But this island's not going to build anymore because we've already got the core of the island there, right? sand is more mobile down there. So if you want to make the island bigger and you want to make the island grow, that's where you make the island grow, right? It's down in the western spit. So they trucked in, all these rocks came by train. They're heavy. I dare you to try to lift one. They're very, very, very heavy, 100-pound piece. So this was about $200 million of Alabama's tax money that was essentially wasted, right? This would have been a great idea down there, right, where the sand is much more mobile. So, with these rocks, however, it's given us a good opportunity because in the Pennsylvanian, okay, at that time up in Pennsylvania, that whole area was submerged in water. So, right, with this being limestone, okay, my historical student isn't here, so she can't answer this question. But limestone represents an environment. If the rest of you take historical, which you should, it's awesome. Don't shake your head, just pretend in line, say yes. It's awesome, right? You're going to learn that every environment has its own fingerprint, essentially, that we can see in the rocks, right? For example, when I see sand, well, I know I'm either in a beach or a desert, right? So you have these environmental markers. Limestone is a marker of a coral reef, right? So when I see limestone, that's telling me at that time there was a coral reef there. So up in Pennsylvania, 380 million years ago, that was a coral reef. It was basically like Key West, right? Gives you an idea for how much the Earth has changed.
Oh no, my kids should know this.
Good.
Y'all should know this.
Good.
You're my class.
Oh, and see, now you come, Haley, after I've asked the question that you would know the answer to.
Fail.
Well, I didn't know. I see you parked right there. It's not too far. I wasn't parked there. All right. Anyway, right, with it being a coral reef environment, there's obviously a lot of organisms, right, that live in there. With that being said, there are tons of fossils in this rock. For example, if some of you want to get close, I took a shower this morning. I don't smell too bad. You're going to see all these little rings in here, okay? And we can show you when we're done talking, there's a better one down there. But these come from an animal called a crinoid. A crinoid is like a sea lily. It has this long, it's an animal, but it has this long stem that anchors itself down to the ground, and it has these tentacles that wave out. And it collects all the sediment, right? All the organic sediment as it passes through the ocean. But when the organism dies, it falls apart, and you end up with all these stem segments. And that's what these little round washer-like are. This whole rock is literally just full of crinoid parts. If you also look at some of these other ones, you're going to see this animal called a bryozoan. A bryozoan looks like lace, okay, on the rock. It's a moss animal, so it encrusts hard surfaces. And in the little holes is where little animals used to live. And then you're also going to see shelled organisms like brachiopods, right, like clams, right, essentially in some of these rocks. So in a few minutes, I'm going to kind of let you wander around and look at some of these. There's a really good rock down here we can go look at in a minute, so we can see these fossils. But the other thing I want to talk about is another reason why this area and the Gulf of Mexico is really important. What do you see a lot of behind me? Oil rigs. Everywhere the eye can look, you see an oil rig. Money. Lots and lots of money to be made. I am in the wrong line of business, right? Right. We don't teach because we like the money, right? So, right? Lots of oil to be found in the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of this oil was in place during the Mesozoic, especially where we live in Louisiana. It's actually a pretty cool thing where we live in Louisiana. Have you guys ever been to Avery Island? How many of you guys have been there? Good. Right, obviously, what do they make on Avery Island? Tabasco. Awesome sauce, right? Tabasco. Right, well, Avery Island's built on top of a salt dome. That word should ring kind of familiar with you because we have lots of salt domes all over Louisiana. Those salt domes were placed in the Jurassic. How cool is that? Big dinosaurs wandering around when all that salt was in place, right? Well, what's cool is that salt is highly porous. So it allows this oil and gas to move up through it. But on top of the salt, what essentially we get is a topper of shale, right? That's very hard and resistant, and it doesn't allow the oil to go through it. So as that salt moves, because salt is actually, it behaves like a liquid, it doesn't behave like a solid. So when you compress salt, it makes it move. So as the salt moves and fractures the rock, it allows for a lot of that oil and gas to move up, where it gets trapped by that hard shale, which is like a concrete. So what happens